On March 3, 2026, a man backed a rental trailer into a storage facility outside Denver and asked me to look at what his late uncle had left behind. He expected me to tell him it was junk. 3 Toyotas had been sitting under car covers for 11 years, untouched, untitled in his name, barely remembered by anyone in the family. He was already planning to call a scrapyard the following week. Instead, I pulled the covers off a Celica GT4, an MR2 Turbo, and a first-generation Land Cruiser 80 series, and I told him something that changed the entire conversation. These are not scrap cars. These are 3 of the most quietly undervalued Toyotas in America, and every year he waited to sell them, they were going to be worth more, not less. I climbed into the Celica first. The battery was long dead, the tires had dry-rotted flat, and mice had clearly been living in the glove box for at least a winter or 2. But the frame was straight, the VIN plate matched the factory homologation code, and underneath a decade of dust sat a genuine all-wheel drive rally special that most people would have mistaken for an ordinary 90s coupe. That is the entire problem with how people value Toyotas right now. They look at the badge, not the engineering underneath it, and that gap between perception and reality is exactly where the money is sitting. Today, I am revealing 5 Toyotas that are still flying under the radar right now in 2026, cars the market has not fully caught up to yet, and why I believe all 5 are positioned to jump significantly in value before 2027 is over. I have watched this pattern before. I watched it with the Mark IV Supra. I watched it with the AE86. I watched it with the FJ40 Land Cruiser. Prices sat flat for years, sometimes decades, while enthusiasts quietly bought them for pocket change. Then something shifted. A movie, an import law, a generational wave of buyers with real disposable income, and the value curve went vertical almost overnight. People who bought early made life-changing money. People who waited paid triple. And right now, in 2026, there is a second wave forming, and almost nobody outside a small circle of specialists is paying attention to it. Here is why this is happening specifically with Toyota, and specifically right now. 3 forces are converging at the exact same time. First, the federal 25-year import exemption is quietly unlocking an entire generation of Japanese market Toyotas that were never sold in America, cars with cult followings overseas, but almost zero supply here, and every single year, a new model year crosses that 25-year line and becomes legal for the first time. Second, the generation that grew up idolizing these cars in magazines, video games, and street culture is now in their late 30s and 40s, with real income and the nostalgia to spend it. Third, Toyota's reputation for reliability means these cars survived. They were driven hard, neglected, and left outside for decades, and they are still running, which means the surviving pool of clean, unmolested examples is shrinking every single year while demand keeps climbing. When supply drops and demand rises at the same time, prices do not move gradually, they jump. I want to walk you through the 5 cars where I believe that jump is coming fastest, starting with the one people most consistently underestimate. Number 5 is the Toyota Celica GT4, sold in North America as the all-track Turbo. This is the car that made me stop the conversation with that trailer in Denver. Most people walking past a Celica GT4 in a parking lot see a sporty coupe from the 90s and keep walking. What they do not realize is that this car is a homologation special built to satisfy World Rally Championship regulations, powered by the same turbocharged 3SGTE engine platform that also lived under the hood of the MR2 Turbo. The ST185 generation ran from 1989 to 1993, producing roughly 240 horsepower from the factory with all-wheel drive and a limited slip setup borrowed almost directly from Toyota's rally program. The ST205 that followed from 1994 to 1999 pushed output to around 250 horsepower and added a water spray intercooler system lifted straight from motorsport engineering. Toyota's rally team won 3 manufacturers' championships with this platform, and Carlos Sainz and Didier Auriol both won drivers' championships behind the wheel of it. Only around 2,500 ST205 GT4s were ever built worldwide, and the homologation spec WRC edition is even rarer. Right now, ST185 examples can still be found for well under $10,000 if you know where to look, while clean, documented ST205 models are already regularly clearing $50,000 at auction. That gap will not last. As more buyers realize they are looking at genuine rally homologation history for the price of a used sedan, the ST185 in particular is going to close that gap fast, and I expect clean, unmodified examples to be functionally unobtainable under $20,000 by the end of 2027. Number 4 is the Toyota MR2 Turbo, chassis code SW20, built from 1989 through 1999. This is the car most people forget is mid-engine, and that detail matters more than almost anything else on this list. A mid-engine layout in a mass-produced Japanese coupe is rare even today, and Toyota built one, sold it new for the price of a Camry, and buyers largely ignored it. Early JDM and US spec turbo models used the 3S GTE, producing around 200 horsepower with a CT26 turbocharger, while later Japan-only revisions pushed output to roughly 245 horsepower with a larger CT20B turbo and a stronger W58 gearbox. The current market spread on these cars is enormous, anywhere from $6,000 for a rough project up to $65,000 for a documented, low-mile late revision Rev 3 through Rev 5 example. What I keep seeing in the field is that clean, unmodified, stock SW20 turbos are simply disappearing. Most of the surviving population has been driven hard, drifted, tracked, or modified into something that no longer holds collector value the way an original car does. Every year that passes, the pool of untouched examples gets smaller, while the number of buyers who understand what a mid-engine Toyota actually represents keeps growing. Values are already described by market analysts as steady to rising, and I think steady is about to end. Once mainstream collector publications catch up to what specialists already know, the SW20 Turbo is going to move the way the Porsche 944 moved a few years ago, quietly, then all at once. Number 3 is the Toyota Land Cruiser 80 Series, built from 1990 to 1997. If you have been paying attention to the classic truck market at all, you already watched the FJ40 explode past 6 figures, and you watched the FJ60 follow right behind it. The 80 Series is the next domino, and it has not fallen yet. This was the last Land Cruiser generation built with a solid front axle option and genuinely serious off-road capability before Toyota shifted the platform toward comfort and daily usability. The FZJ80 variant, powered by Toyota's 4.5-liter inline-6, is currently averaging around $27,000 across the market, with a real range stretching from roughly $4,000 for a rough, high-mileage truck up to $75,000 for a pristine, low-mileage VXR example. That is an enormous spread for a truck built on a reputation this strong. What makes the 80 Series different from a typical used SUV is the same thing that made the FJ40 valuable. These trucks were engineered to survive literally anything, and enough of them did, which means there is still a real supply of drivable, restorable examples on the market today, at prices that do not yet reflect how good these trucks actually are. Off-road culture has exploded over the last 5 years. Overlanding is now a mainstream hobby instead of a niche one, And buyers who cannot afford a six-figure FJ40 are actively hunting for the next affordable Land Cruiser with real credibility. That is exactly what the 80 series is, and I do not think it stays under $30,000 average for much longer. Back in that Denver storage unit, the 80 series was the one that surprised the owner the most. He assumed the newest truck of the three was worth the least, simply because it looked the most ordinary sitting under its cover. I had to explain that ordinary is exactly the disguise this generation has been hiding behind for 30 years, and that disguise is starting to fall apart as buyers finally understand what they are looking at. Number 2 is the Toyota Supra Mark3, chassis code A70, built from 1987 to 1992. Everyone knows the Mark IV Supra. Almost nobody talks about the car that came before it, and that is the entire opportunity. The A70 Turbo used Toyota's 7MGTE, a turbocharged inline-six, producing around 230 horsepower and 254 pound-feet of torque, capable of roughly 6.4 seconds to 60, which made it the fastest Japanese car sold in America at the time it launched. It was also mechanically significant in its own right, using one of the first mass-produced distributorless ignition systems ever sold in the United States. Right now, average auction prices for A70 Turbo models sit around $24,800, with recent results ranging from roughly $11,000 up to a record sale of $88,888 for a pristine early 5-speed car. Reported data shows A70 Turbo values have climbed more than 200% since 2013, and that was before most buyers even started paying attention. The reason is simple. As Mark IV Supra prices climbed into six figures for clean examples, priced completely out of reach for most enthusiasts, buyers who grew up wanting a Supra started looking one generation earlier for the same badge, the same turbocharged inline-six formula, and a fraction of the price. That migration is still in its early stages. I expect A70 Turbo values to keep climbing sharply as Mark IV prices continue pulling further away, leaving the Mark III as the last genuinely attainable turbocharged Supra. Number 1 is the Toyota Chaser and Mark II, specifically the JZX100 and JZX110 generations, and this is the one with a hard deadline attached to it. The JZX100 ran from 1996 to 2001, built around the 1JZ GTE, a 2.5-liter turbocharged inline-six officially rated at 280 horsepower, though that number was a gentleman's agreement between Japanese manufacturers rather than a real ceiling, and these engines are famous for handling more than 400 horsepower with nothing more than bolt-on modifications. The JZX100 became legal to import into the United States back in 2021, once it crossed the federal 25-year exemption line, and prices have already climbed steadily since that door opened. But here is the part almost nobody is talking about yet. The JZX110 Mark II, which replaced the Chaser starting in October of 2000, only began crossing that same 25-year import line in October of 2025, and every single month between now and the end of 2027, another slice of that generation becomes legal for the first time. This is not a gradual market shift. This is a hard, calendar-based unlock, model year by model year, and the earliest legal JZX110s are still sitting in a window before mainstream American buyers even realize they exist. Specialists are already calling this out directly, warning that the so-called drift tax has not been fully activated yet because supply has not caught up with awareness. By the time the entire JZX110 range clears the 25-year threshold at the end of 2027, I expect the affordable window on this platform to be completely closed. This is the single most time-sensitive opportunity on this list, and it is the reason it sits at number 1. Here is what ties all 5 of these cars together, and why I think 2027 specifically matters. Every one of them survived because Toyota built them to survive. Every one of them was overlooked for years because the obvious icons, the Mark IV Supra, the AE86, and the FJ40, absorbed all the attention and all the early money. And every one of them is now sitting at the exact intersection of shrinking clean supply, rising nostalgia-driven demand, and, in the case of the JDM models, a legal import window that is unlocking in real time. I am not telling you this because I think you should treat your car as a stock ticker. I am telling you this because I have watched this exact pattern play out before with Toyotas that used to sell for pocket change, and I watched people kick themselves for not buying 5 years earlier. The uncle's storage unit in Denver was not luck. It was 3 cars that most people would have scrapped without a second thought, sitting on tens of thousands of dollars in value that almost got thrown away because nobody understood what they were looking at. I ended up helping that Denver family list all 3 cars separately instead of dumping them as a single lot to the first buyer who showed up with cash. The Celica alone sold for more than double what the nephew originally expected the entire trailer load to bring. That is what happens when you understand what you actually own instead of guessing at it, and it is exactly the gap I want you walking away from this video able to close for yourself. If this changed how you look at these cars, hit like so more people see it before prices move. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns on which classics are quietly appreciating before the mainstream market catches up. And if you already own one of these 5, tell me in the comments, because I guarantee you paid less for it than what it will be worth by the time 2027 ends.